Hi guys, this is Lachette from Scarlet Moon Creations, and I'm back with my end of February reading wrap up. Now, before we get into the books read, I have two things I want to talk about. First is really briefly going over the readathons I participated in the second half of this month. Um, which is the continuation of Blackathon, which ran the entire month of February, and the other readathon was Tome Topple, which ran from, sorry, I forgot the dates. Tome Topple ran from the 7th through the 20th of February. So I didn't talk about it because I only read one tome. That is I'll go into details about what book I read for which prompt and for each readathon in the reviews for each book, but I did talk about contemporary-thon reads in my last reading wrap-up, which was for the first half of February, and the first Blackathon reads that I read there, so check that out if you want to know everything. The other thing I want to talk about is my reading stats for the month, and something I've been wanting to add to my videos for a while, but I have not been keeping track, so it's kind of hard to put that in. But now I am. So let's go over it. For the month of February, I read a total of 10 books, or I should say I attempted to read a total of 10 books. I read a total of 1,681 pages and listened to 33.4 hours of audiobook. My average rating was 4. Let's see, 06, and I acquired one book, though I did not read that book during this month yet. I also borrowed 11 library books and read 3 owned voices books. Now, as far as the genres, I read 4 contemporary novels, 2 fantasy, 1 graphic novel, 1 mystery, 1 paranormal, and 1 sci-fi. Format, I read 2 audiobooks, 1 ebook, and 7 physical books. Now, the audience, I wasn't sure about one book, Binti, so I didn't include that here, but otherwise I read 6 adult books, 1 middle grade, and 2 young adult books. And lastly, as for my ratings, I read 1 5-star book, 1 4.5-star book, 4 4-star books, Jesus, 2 3.5-star books, and DNF, did not finish, 2 books. So technically, I only read 8 books this month. And yeah, so now let's jump right into the books that I read. Let's talk about them. So the first book that I read during this month was The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, and I read the ebook. I can show you the cover here without too much glare. This is a fantasy novel that I got interested in thanks to BookTube. I recently someone read it, and I think it was Elliot Brooks, and she was saying how some of the writing style annoyed her. And I saw in some of her comments that other people were like, it might be better audiobook. So I was like, okay, I put in for the audiobook, and then I got it a lot quicker than I thought I would, and so I wound up reading it this month which worked out because this wound up being the only tome I completed for this round of Tome Topple. Tome Topple is a readathon that I took part in. It is run by Sam at Thoughts on Tomes, and I'll link in the description down below. The basics for Tome Topple is you read a book, a tome, and a tome is defined as 500 plus pages. Now, this book, I don't even remember how many pages it is. It's a tome. It is. But since I listened to the audiobook, I don't remember exactly how many pages it is. But yeah, it's high fantasy. Uh, I guess it fits in the sword and sorcery subgenre for fantasy, high fantasy in specific, but those are that like the world has that, but that's not the focus of the main characters. This is a thief heist focused book. The main character, Locke Lamora, is a thief. That's his life. That's his be all end all. Apparently from childhood, birth, maybe even. Um, I've enjoyed the hell out of this. It was my type of humor. I will say there's a lot of cursing. It gets less as the characters get older and the story goes on. But since we start out with them pretty young, it's they take cursing and make it an art form as only young boys can do. Um, I like the friends group. This also had me in my emotions in various places, and yeah, also one of the things that I really like about like heist books and thievery is the the complexity. Like it takes a lot of strategy, mental and physical, and dexterity to pull these things off. And it's it's interesting for me to see the behind the scenes. At any given point in time in this book, there are several schemes going on at varying levels of completion, and just when you think you know what's happening, you don't. Um, I will say this though, as far as the antagonist, the bad guy, I wasn't really impressed with them and their motivations. I think because there's so little build up. 2/3 of the book is just about Locke and the crew, the gentleman bastards, and they are we get dual timelines when they were kids and current day as adults of whatever age they are, and how they're pulling off these different heists. And then the last third of the book is how this bad guy comes in and has these motivations, and it's just like, huh? But why? And then that's really, really elaborate for this reason. And I don't know. It didn't feel like their motivations were concrete enough, or we didn't get enough time spent on them for me to really feel like they needed to do all of that. So, that being said, I love this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and pulling up now, let me find out. Oh, I didn't even write it here. Sorry, it was 21 hours. I didn't write down how many pages it was. Oh well. But it was definitely a tome, and I used it to fill 2 prompts because that was all we are allowed. And those prompts for Tome Topple was to read an adult tome and to read a tome from a series. This is the first in the Gentleman Bastards series. Next up, I read For Blackathon, these Blackathon is, like I mentioned in the last video, a readathon spanning the entire month of February, Black History Month, this year from the 1st to the 29th, since it's a leap year. And yeah, let's start with the good. Let's start with the good. So, I read Binti by Nnedi Okorafor, and I might be mispronouncing that. This is the first in a series. I probably could have gotten all 3 books in the series since this is tiny, 96 pages, but I wasn't sure if I would like it. I have not really read sci-fi and not published, and I have not read like Afrofuturism like this. It was really interesting. The ending, everything kind of wrapped up really, really, really quickly, but I mean, it's only 96 pages. I like the cultural differences and how Binti thinks about her people, the Himba versus pretty much everyone else. Um, this is about Binti, who she is the first of her people to be accepted into UMZA University, which is off-planet international interstellar university. But it sounds like honestly they've never had black people. Not that the Himba are the only black people on Earth, but they're the only ones we focus on. They never leave their planet, so Binti accepting the acceptance and actually going to Umza is a big deal. She sneaks out. Her family was completely against it. Everything about her culture is very planet based. And she doesn't know how she's going to make it. And this is basically just about her trip there, what happens, which is unexpected and very emotional, and how she gets there, the trip there, and then what happens once she gets there. I can't really say much more than that because it's short and it'll give away the plot. But it was good. I want to read the rest. I'm glad this is like my first intro into not only Afrofuturism but sci-fi in general, reading wise, because I definitely want to read more. So I read that for Blackathon, like I said, and that was to read a science fiction and fantasy book with a cunning and ambitious black protagonist. Binti was definitely cunning and ambitious. Just her leaving her home world to go to UMZA University was showed both of those. The trip there and how she dealt with all of that highlighted it. And now we get into the negatives. So I attempted to read 2 other books for Blackathon, and let's just say I DNF'd them both. One is definite DNF, the other I might come back to. So first, I attempted to read Queenie by Candice Carty Williams. This is a standalone contemporary novel. I also attempted to read this for Contemporary-a-thon. Queenie for Blackathon, I wanted to read as a work that's not set in the United States and not the center of the Black American narrative. And for Contemporary-a-thon, I wanted to read it as my new to me author, but as you know from my last video, the other 2 books both fit that prompt, so it was okay. This is about Queenie, I think she's Jamaican British. How do you say that? I don't know. Queenie Jenkins. She's a journalist, Jamaican British, yes, and she's going through some things. So the problem is, I was interested in this book thanks to the host of Blackathon, Jesse at Bold Ties and Books. They had mentioned this book before. I saw a couple of other people mention it, but I picked it up this round because of them. And I never read anything about black British people, and I thought that would be interesting, and I was glad for the prompt. Um, and then I saw on Goodreads, and then in the book, peop- it being compared to Bridget Jones's Diary, and I was like, oh no, because I don't really like that. Not even the movies. I haven't read Bridget Jones's Diary, but that's the kind of contemporary I'm not too interested in. It's hyper focused on the main character and their daily regular goings on, which is valid, but I don't care, and that was the problem. I struggled to get through 2 chapters of this and then gave up because contemporary fun was over and I did not care. The only thing I found somewhat interesting was her doctor's visit, and having an island background. A quarter of my family's from Barbados, and having many friends from other uh, islands around Caribbean islands, I can identify with some of the stuff that she was going through, but it wasn't enough. The narrative shifts at it was very it felt very like stream of conscious, and I just did not care. I could not care any less, and I'm probably never gonna even attempt to try that again. Second bad news, but I might try this again. Sula by Toni Morrison. I was trying to fit this in towards the end of the month. It's a short one. I own this. I got about halfway through, so I might finish it. Sula is by Toni Morrison, who is she's got a Nobel Peace Prize, a Nobel Literature Prize, sorry. And this counts as a contemporary. I wanted to read it for contemporary thon, but it was like a last minute add on. Like, if I don't get my other 3 books read, or if I get them read and I still have time, I'll read Sula, because this can count for Blackathon as well. And this would have counted as my backlist book because this came out in 1982, I believe. And for Blackathon, a book where the black protagonist challenges preconceived notions of blackness and what black means. A black revolutionary character. Maybe. I wasn't sure. This is supposed to be about Nell and Sula, who are 2 close friends growing up in a small Ohio town. What is it? Is it Mandolin? I forget the name of the town, but Medallion. And this takes place in the 1920s for the most part. Like, I think it starts in 1919. Yeah, 1919, but mostly takes place in the 1920s and 30s. And I got through the first half, which is the 1920s, their childhood. The thing is, it says like it's about these friends who grew up together and then they kind of go their separate ways and become different women going through different things, and then they come back together in their old town. Nell, I guess, stays in Medallion, which is a small black community, and Sula leaves, goes to college. She, does the city life and, becomes rebellious and a seductress apparently. But I thought we would get more of them growing up. The first quarter of this, like half of the first part, is not about them. It's before them, their parents, their town, um, what was going on in America at that time, how the town was created, and then there's a lot. There we start to get some more about them being friends towards the end of part one, and then we haven't gotten to part two yet. So I was just like, when are we gonna get to what the synopsis says? So yeah, I didn't want to fall into a reading slump, so I put it down and therefore did not finish it in time for Blackathon. But I hope to finish it soon because it's short. It's 174 pages, not a big deal. And I'm already halfway through. So, with that said, let's get back to some good news because the last book I'm going to talk about right now is the one that I picked up because I was like, I don't want to fall into a reading slump. Let me read something that I want to read. Connections in Death by J.D. Robb. So, Golden in Death, which is book 50 in the In Death series, recently came out. And the library sent it to me immediately. And I was like, well, send me this because I had to read the two before it. I haven't read those yet. So, this is the In Death series is one of my series that I wish to catch up on. Series I want to finish that are ongoing. The In Death series is this. This came out last year. This particular, this is a sort of, it's a futuristic sci-fi mystery series. There is romance. It's a lot of police procedural stuff. It's each book we follow a different case, and we get updates on Eve Dallas, Lieutenant Eve Dallas, who is the main character, and her husband Rourke, who is like a main character as well. They're friends and family or whatever. This book is about how Rourke is opening a new school and youth shelter at Didion, and he hires child psychologist Dr. Rochelle to run the staff. Dr. Rochelle, we find out, is dating Crack, who is an old friend of Eve's, who runs a bar or whatever. Her younger brother is found overdosed in the apartment that the two share, he and Dr. Rochelle. And it looks like he's gone back to his negative past where he was a junkie, an addict, and a gang member. But Eve is a good police officer. Crack calls her. She comes in and she can see these are flimsy signs and someone set him up. It looks like they forced him to take the drugs and basically they murdered him. So now she's on the case to figure out what happens. This is the first in 48 of this series where we really focus on the gangs, gang wars. I didn't know exactly how to feel about this. Um, and I don't think Eve did either. I feel like a lot of what's shown here is kind of a cliched look at gangs and a cliched negative aspect of gangs. I'm not, I don't love gangs. I don't feel like gangs are a good thing, but it's very much inner city gangs because they're in New York City in the future, and we're basically looking at a gang that's on the not on the rise, but falling by the wayside. They're not as powerful as they used to be, and things are weird. Um, but I also felt like this didn't show a lot of the reasons, any of the I don't want to say positive, but reasons why a lot of people join gangs. This very much focused on the predators, the the people who join gangs for negative reasons because they want to prey on other people. Um, and this definitely highlighted the absence of what happens when there's no loyalty in a gang, and I feel like that's kind of the opposite of what the point of a gang is often. So yeah, I don't know. I had like mixed feelings about this towards the end. I also didn't like the comparison between Andidian and the girls who were found there in a previous book and the gang members, the male gang members in this one. Just, it made no sense to me. They're not comparable. Why would you do that? It's, yeah. So, um, otherwise, this was really good, and I gave it 4 stars, or 3.5 stars, I should say. It was really good. Glad to see like gang life focused on in here, but this was very much from a police officer's point of view. I felt like. So that's the last book I'm going to talk about. That's the last book I read in the month of February. Thank you so much for watching. You can find my social media. Stuff is falling. You can find my social media and the links down in the description below. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and also my Goodreads account to see reading updates, I guess. So that is all. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.